Mark?
Yeah, everybody all right? Yes, people, respect. Welcome to another edition of MAN'S DEM Chat. You know, this week we have a very special guest speaker in the house, Mr. Nathan Abbey, aka Tani, aka Super T. I know he's probably got a few more names we can't call on here. You know, he's going to be talking to us today about his professional football career, maybe dwell into his coaching and what he's been doing since he retired from the beautiful game. So yeah, so welcome to MAN'S DEM Chat, Tani.
Bless up, Mark. Appreciate that.
No worries, brother.
Good to have you, Tani.
How did it all begin, T? I know you, but you and your brother have always been booting some kind of round object around.
Yeah, I think we just from an era where we played outside, didn't it? I think we just played outside as youths, didn't we? We just had a passion for football, I suppose. But I think we was also lucky enough that we had a lot of youth clubs, youth centres, parks where there's no danger, back garden, and we kind of just fell into enjoying it, and it kind of escalated from there. You kind of then play for your school team, you then get selected in the county, and then before you know it, you're trying to push for Luton schools. And mine was quite funny because before I signed for Luton, I was at Luton schools and we had a training exercise, and the youth development officer at the time come to watch us, and he was looking for a goalkeeper. So I was kind of a bit brazen, were you looking at one? And he said he'd offer me a trial. But it was close to pre-season and he hadn't rang me. So I just kind of went to Yellow Pages, found the number, rang him and said, look, you said you're going to give me a trial. And from that, he basically invited me in. We played against West Ham, and then I was at Luton, and that's how I started my journey at Luton. From that, just that one phone call, getting off my backside and trying to be a bit proactive.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's good. That's good.
So you basically, you had to assert yourself then. You had to put the wheels in motion.
Yeah, I mean, football in general is a lot about luck and timing. And who knows, if I didn't make that phone call, maybe my path in football wouldn't have been what it would have been. I don't know, I have no clue. But I knew it was a dream that I wanted to, fulfill. I weren't great at school. School weren't really for me. And I put all my energy and drive into trying to be the best that I could be playing football, and tried to get to the highest level that I could get to, and kind of just make a good opportunity of it. And when the opportunity come, I kind of took it. And I don't even remember when I was a schoolboy at Luton Town. I remember before we got offered the pro, my dad would probably know this. I remember they called my mum and my dad in, and they were like, look, we're going to offer him a schoolboy, but if I was you, I wouldn't let him sign it because he's got a good goalkeeper in front of him, Kelvin Davis, a youngster coming through behind him, Nick Webb. He's going to struggle. But I think along with my parents, they knew that was my biggest drive, and obviously I'd make something for it. And I think that made me more determined to be successful and obviously make a good go of it. And like, when you're a youngster at Luton and you're doing all those mad jobs and running around like a skivvy after the pros, at the end of it, you need to turn pro. So there was enough to drive me to become a pro and make a career, because I knew on the education front, it weren't for me,
Sorry, carry on, Nathan, but could everybody not speaking mute their mic unless they got a question, please?
Yeah, and then from there, I done my schoolboy, lucky enough to turn pro at 17. Got an opportunity to turn pro at 17, and from there I kind of went out in a lot of non-league clubs. Lenny Lawrence at the time, obviously originally started under David Pleat, and then obviously Lenny sent me to all kinds of non-league levels, and when I got to the last one, which was Woking, he said to me if I go there and do well, then when I come back I'd have a pro. And to be honest with you, that's what happened. I've done well enough to turn the start journey into an end journey. But when you turn pro, you're now in the nitty gritty. I think that window between first year and third year pro is the defining moment that keeps you in the game, or you end up kind of on the scrap heap with a number of players. It's a a small window of percentage of people that make it pro and stay a pro. It's easier in this era, but in our era where it was all men, you had a 20-man, 25-man first team squad, 20-man reserve team squad. So it was a lot more difficult at that time. So it was nice that I could kind of have a resilient career, I'd say.
So Tony, what's the difference now between like apprentices nowadays and apprentices in your days? I take it they don't have to clean boots and paint the stand and all that stuff anymore, do they? Or do they? I don't know.
No, I think
that's still.
It's not as bad as that now. I think they might still have to do boots, but I think that's as bad as it gets because obviously in the modern era there's kitman and all kinds of different roles within a football club that the kids don't have to do. But I also think it's the undoing of them because it's made them a bit soft and a bit kind of weak underbelly because they don't have that kind of discipline factor to push them through in the tough times when you're playing football. There's a lot of tough times when you play football, and I think those rubbish jobs that we had to do gave you good grounding to then push forward. But I think it's a lot easier in this era to turn pro or make a living in the game because the squads are a lot thinner, they're a lot slighter. So the youngsters get more opportunity to come through now, which is good. It's refreshing to see because too many of them were not making that transition when they turned pro. So it's for the better, but in some respects for the worse.
So whose boots did you use to clean then?
I done Jurgen Sommer when he was there, and done Kingsley Black and John Artson's. Well, they were my three. I done a year of it because I turned pro at 17. I only had to do it for a year because at that time it was 2-year apprenticeship rather than the current 3-year scholarship.
How many years did you play for, Danny?
For Luton, I signed 1994 and I left in 2000.
Okay.
So done a fair amount of time. I've done a fair amount of time there. I left at the right time for me, I suppose. At that time, I needed to push on and kind of rediscover myself. When I had my first season, I look back at my first season, I used to think to myself, that was my worst season because when I was a youngster and I was playing in the reserves, I'd come and get crosses anywhere. That was my strength. I was blessed with a bit of spring. And in the youth team reserves, I'd take crosses anywhere. But when you try and do that at first team level, if it goes wrong, it's more at stake. There's points at stake. You've got fans on your back. And I remember kind of losing a bit of me in cautiousness because I'd made mistakes, forgetting that I was young. And it took, to be fair, my goalkeeping coach, at the end of my first season in the team, I think I must have been 19. He's asked me why I was so vexed all the time. I was like, because I think I've had a bad season. And he kind of reminded me that year in my first season as a baby, I played 40 back-to-back games out of a possible 46 league games. And it kind of took me that to realise, actually, you've achieved something that I could take as a grounding into the next season, which obviously we tried to do. So tough, but you get yourself through it.
Who made the decision? Who made the decision for you to become? Sorry, Spence. Who made the decision for you to become a goalkeeper, or was that your decision?
It was a bit of my decision. I played on pitch. I used to play left wing, and I played out on pitch up until under 16, and then I got to the crossroad where you've got to make a decision which way you're going to go. I just felt, and even speaking to a few kind of experienced people or experienced coaches that I worked with, that being in goal was my strongest position. I didn't mind it in goal. My brother used to always fling me in goal anyway, so it was something that I could get used to. And obviously, with being in goal, you have to you're either about it or you're not about it. And obviously, because I had that bit of I could do it, I went with what I felt was going to make me a career rather than what was going to be a chance.
So you preferred being a goalkeeper than being on the pitch as a player, as a midfielder, a striker, defender?
I wouldn't necessarily say prefer. I think being a goalkeeper is a lonely place. You've got to be tough. You've got to be headstrong. I think when you play on pitch, there's a lot more opportunities available. You've only got to score a few goals and get moves. You can achieve more. You can earn more. There's a lot more that goes into it. But I think once you're in the mindset of a goalkeeper. I don't look back and regret not being a goalkeeper. It was a blessing actually, because I was one of the few at the time black goalkeepers that were on the circuit full stop. So that was a good amount of drive to keep me focused on what I was doing. So it weren't really a massive decision. I mean, if anybody said to anybody, most young men that love football, you could be a pro, but you can't choose what position you're going to be, I think we'd all take it. So just to be involved in it was a blessing.
What was your early?
And what age? Last question, Spencer. Sorry. Last question, my brother. What age was it when you decided that you wanted to play professional football, whether it's goalkeeper, be on the pitch? What age was that when you realized that's what I want to do amongst everything else, out of everything else?
Early age, I think. I can't remember exactly. I'm bad when it comes to remembering past 14. But one thing that I do remember as a youngster, Eric, I can't remember his surname. Eric used to take us to a lot of Luton games when they were down on the plastic pitch, and even going to Wembley, watching at Wembley against Arsenal. He used to take us literally every week, and I think from even just that had its own power in saying, I want to replicate what's going on the pitch and be on that pitch one day. So even something like that from Eric back in the day, it's great. You know, it drives you on to achieve something. So that's the best way I can answer that.
Yeah. Good on you, man. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's just that I was wondering. So, what was your real team that you wanted to actually play for? What was your real team you wanted to play for? You say you play for Luton, but I wanted to know, was they your team you wanted to join in the first place, or was there any other team you preferred?
Well, as a kid, in my later days, I've always support Arsenal, and I do support Arsenal now. So the dream would have always been to play for Arsenal, which obviously didn't happen. But outside of that, I think I achieved the best thing I could have achieved by playing for my hometown club. Obviously, I was born in London, but that was when I was probably before I can remember. So I've lived most of my life in Luton. So Luton's my home, and even with the people we know through my parents, the background of my parents within the community, the likes of all the faces that I see on here today, people that me and my brother grew up as with kids, it was almost like also was representing the people. So to go and select and be privileged enough to play for Luton, that was the best of a bad situation. If I managed to get to Arsenal, that would have been great. But just the fact that I played for Luton, you can't really. It's harder. It's easier said than done in this era. In football in general, you find a lot of players that live in an area end up playing for a totally different team. Yeah.
So did you actually have a goalkeeper that was you wanted to emulate, like, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So my idol was Shaka Hislop. Again, one of the few black goalkeepers at the time on the circuit. I think at the time he might have been at Reading when I used to really follow him. And I kind of emulated myself on him to a degree, wearing my shirt, hanging out. It was, you know, I just looked up at him going, you know, if he can do that, I can do that. And every time his clips come on, I'd really focus on what he was doing. And I took a lot of my game from his game. So when you ask that question, it's a good question, because what you don't realise in football is sometimes there's people that kind of emulate themselves on yourself when you don't think about it. I remember being on holiday, and you might not know him, but Matt Murray, black goalkeeper, used to play for Wolves, represent his country. I remember seeing him as a youngster, and I knew who he was because obviously Wolves was a big club. And he come up to me and said, "Yeah, I look up to you, man. I want to be like you." And I couldn't understand that. But he was a youngster coming through. But when I kind of checked myself, it's the same how I felt about Shaka, how he felt about myself. So it's kind of, you drive people on, and I think colour plays a part, because, as I said to you, it was one of those positions that was very few. It was very minority. So I think a lot of that also gave us a special bond. So we communicated well with each other, especially when we saw each other, or be that a game or be that on a social.
One more question. So I was wondering. So you were. So did you feel conspicuous when you were playing then in that position, like, yeah, as a goalkeeper, as a field goal keeper, whatever? Did you feel some sort of pressure to actually be the best you can or above?
I think that position comes with its own pressure, regardless of colour. It comes with an enormous amount of pressure, to be honest. But there is that element of, as a black man, you don't want to be the guy that's letting the team down in a highlighted position. I think if you play it out on 1 to 11, but you don't play in number 1, I think you can hide amongst many other players, regardless of their colour. But the spotlight's always on you when you're in goal. And I think even when you're black in that era, it's even more so on you. And not just from a pressure point of view, but also from kind of fans behind you point of view. You know, we're still in an era where the chat behind the stand's crazy. So you have to be strong-minded to kind of overcome that. That used to be my biggest strength. You know, I actually preferred it, as mad as it sounds, when people chatted crap, because it made me better. It made me want to make sure that I didn't let myself down and kind of override anything that was being said, if that makes sense.
So Tandy, can you hear it? Because they say, you know, obviously Kenilworth Road, isn't it? It's really compact, isn't it? And it's tight. The fans are on top of you. So could you hear what people were saying in that a lot of the time? You can.
You can. I mean, yeah. Kenilworth Road being a prime example, it's probably one of the oldest grounds still going, and it is tight. Everyone's on top of you. But I just think generally playing in goal, you can hear a lot playing in goal, because generally you're so close to the fans and the barrier. And almost it's when the play's dead, like goal kicks and stuff like that, when it's actually quite quiet, you can hear things. Now, when you normally play a game in the bigger stadiums and there's a lot of fans, I can't hear from the halfway line to the 18-yard box. You generally can't hear. You can't hear your manager shouting, because the atmosphere that is generated overpowers the normal one-man talking, if that makes sense. But if I had a penny, not even a pound, a penny for every comment I heard, I'd be a very rich man. But as I said, for me, that's kind of water for ducks back, you know.
Is there any particular experience that you remember, maybe say in the early days, any like that sticks in mind?
Two stick out for me, Skip. I remember being a youngster, and I was on loan at the time before I got pro, and I was really young. And I remember it being a corner. We was away somewhere down, I can't remember, somewhere down in south. And I remember this corner about to get taken, and there was quite a few fans behind the goal. And I could hear people saying, split the ball. So at that point, it was kind of a sink or swim. Again, living in an era where everything's kind of predominantly white, players were white, all the fans were white. And it was kind of at that moment, I thought, right, I've got to send a message here. And in my head, before the corner got took, I just said, whoever's coming to try and leave something on me, I'm going to make sure I land the first blow. So the first corner come in, bam, you know, I clarted him, because I was like, I'm a kid, but I'm not afraid and I'm not an idiot. And then again, as I said, it inspired me to do very well. And then even after the game, I remember leaving, and those same people were coming to give me praise for how well I played and how I handled it. And I'm thinking to myself, move from me. That's not how, you don't work that. You know, you said what you said, and I can't leave that, but it is what it is. So to them people, they call it banter. It's not banter. But as I said, I was just lucky enough for it not to affect me in performances in that scenario. And then it's the classic, when you're playing goal and you go to your places like your Millwalls, where at the times very, very racist place, it's just constantly coins. So you can hear the coins hitting the crossbar, hitting the post, where all kinds of things are getting thrown. But you just got to, if you get hit, you get hit. But at the same time, you've got to keep your concentration and kind of just override it. It was almost like you had to block things out to just get your job done, because I'm getting paid to do a job, and I suppose my livelihood's on the line. So in them scenarios, if you let it disrupt you, then it's only going to cause you problem. No one's going to be listening to this man said that or that man said that.
Did you experience any racism at Luton?
Not from the fans per se. That's probably a genuine conversation, not in my ear. It's like anything else, and I say it all the time.
I don't remember, because I watched most of your games at Luton.
Yeah,
and I remember you having a couple of bad games as well, and I I don't really recall. Yeah, cuss you and that, but not on a racial tip. I can't remember. I don't think I did.
No, I think
if it happened, I would have remembered and I would have probably told you, innit?
I think you have to remember at Luton,
Yeah.
we had some greats go through Luton, the Steam brothers, Ricky Hill, okay, Mitchell Thomas, Marvin Johnson. The list before that. So you got to remember that some greats have came through Luton's ranks long before I stepped foot in there. So I think there was almost that also respect level for black players within their football club. I know many cases at many clubs where people that I know have been racially abused by their own fans because that's the way it is. I think we're kind of blessed to a degree in Luton. It's a bit of more of a central hub where it's a little bit more multicultural. You're not up in the sticks of kind of Rochdale and places like that. That's just an example where the population is so different that it's an expectation. And I think we were lucky at Luton. I have heard since there's been a couple of incidents, but I just think that's the new wave of culture of what I call kids coming through with their lack of education to match that kind of throw up those kind of problems that now happen.
What advice would you give to an up-and-coming footballer, black footballer, goalkeeper, anybody who wants to join the football fraternity?
You got to work hard, Skip. I remember, some of you remember Stuart Douglas.
Yeah.
So when we came through the ranks, it was only me and Stuart Douglas. We were the only two black guys within that youth team setup. We used to have first years, second years. At the time, we were both first years. Then we were second years together. And I think then the year below us, one or two may have come through. And you almost, we call it the building. You go into the building and you almost change who you are to fit in the building. Because I'll take John Moore out of this. John Moore was a lovely fella, Scottish fella, but there was a lot of old white coaches or people of importance within the club. And how you carried yourself was massively important on decisions that got made on you. And I remember when I played my first season in goal, and as far as I was concerned, I've achieved something, so I can have a voice. That's when I kind of stepped up. And when I saw the youngsters come through, as we all know, we're loud. We're all loud, and together we kick up, make bare noise, but we're still misunderstood. Yeah, our laughter, our swagger, the way we walk, the way we talk, the way we dress can be so misconstrued from attitude to culture, if that makes sense. If you saw a man walk in with a sari on, nobody would bat an eyelid because that's his culture. But all of a sudden, if we're walking with our pants hanging down, we're a problem. And what I used to do is I used to educate the old white coach and say, look, they're not being ignorant. They ain't got a chip on their shoulder. They're just how we carry ourselves. But what I then would say to the black youth, so look, you're going to have to change how you're being to get through this journey. Because it, rightly or wrongly, and it's wrong, but rightly or wrongly, if you want to get through this process and kick on, you've got to change. And I think that's a problem for us, even outside of football. I think we're so stuck and going, well, we're black, it's how we are. And then we'll moan about all the opportunities that we don't get, rather than actually saying, actually, let's fix up a little bit and get through life. And then when we're a person of importance or of achievement, then our voice will be heard. And that might be wrong for me to say that, but it is the fact. You wouldn't go to a job interview in a hoodie, in a tracksuit. You'd put the smartest attire that you have to try and get past that interview stage. And I think that's the same in life, football, whatever it is. You have to kind of, there's a bit of conforming that you have to do to get through this journey in life. And as sad as it is to say, it's the reality.
Isn't that a common theme?
Good point.
You've got a chip on your shoulder and all of that. That is a common theme.
It's common now. It's so relative, because anything that's met with, and they use the word aggression, which really annoys me. Anything that's met with challenge becomes aggression, or it becomes a chip on the shoulder. What people don't realize is we've been through so much. We're so far ahead of being streetwise. So we know when we've been taken for an idiot, and we know when you're being fair. But what we do as people naturally is we stand up for ourselves first. And I think that's the bit where it gets so lost in translation that we're always targeted for something that we're not. And don't get me wrong, there's many cases where we are what we are, but naturally speaking, we're all on a journey, and it's even these chats here or people that have gone on to do things that can have a voice. You look at someone like Stormzy. Stormzy's the most humblest guy, but if he starts chatting the truth, nobody can tell him anything. He's Stormzy, yeah? But the normal average guy will say the same thing Stormzy is saying, and he's got a chip on his shoulder. That can't work for me. That's the bit that falls flat.
Okay, I'll ask another question. How was the relationship between you and your brother? Because I know your brother played as well. I don't know, you two are quite jokingly, and when I say you guys together are quite fun to watch still. But
we were lucky.
Right.
You know, we were lucky because me and my brother have always been close. And I think even through our youthfulness, you didn't see one without the other, and which obviously was a good relationship for us. And I think even in football sense, it was good because on the non-league setup, Z was a top player, and when we talk about chances and opportunities, he was just waiting for that opportunity to land, and he almost probably played at a higher level in a shorter window, or got further in his journey in a short window than I got. I was just lucky that mine started earlier and went on longer, if that makes sense. But it was refreshing to see him make the same journey that I made, because I know deep down that's what he wanted to do. But Z was lucky because he was very good with education. So by the time he got into football, he'd been to college, he had a degree. So he came to football in a better education point than I did. So he almost done his backwards, but almost got to the same destination. And we were very fortunate because we played against each other. So that was a no nonsense situation. I don't care, my brother. This is wartime. Yeah.
When did you and Z play against each other?
So I was at Boston at the time, and he was at Wickham on loan from Norwich. Okay. And we played against each other there. We won 1-0. And then we were looking for a striker, and I kind of convinced my manager to sign him on loan. So then we signed him on loan. So again, we was fortunate to play probably within the same month against each other and then with each other. So it was nice that we played a lot of our football younger days together, then broke off and then almost come back again together. I suppose at a time where we could look back and say, yeah, we both played against each other and with each other as pros. And even that's another achievement. There's very few brothers that play in the same team at that level of football. So it was nice for us both to kind of complete that journey at the same time.
Cool.
So T, you ended up leaving Luton eventually.
Has he ever put a ball past you then?
No. No. That's do or die, man. He's got to get his legs chopped off for that.
So what happened next after you left Luton then?
When I left Luton, I went to Chesterfield. That was when Joe Kinnear come in, and Joe was moving kind of mad. And I was at a window where, as I said earlier in the conversation, I needed to go to pastures new for myself, I suppose. An opportunity come up at Chesterfield, which was for me far cold, but it was that opportunity for me to break away from the pack and focus on looking after my own career at the same time as well. And I remember at the time, I think there was in receivership, the money was dead. My agent was like saying, don't do it. And I was like, but Luton at the time, I think I got relegated to League 2. These were in League 1. And I was like, don't worry about the money side of it. I'll turn that money into better money, because you get to a point where contracts are involved. And to be fair, it was the best thing I've done, because I got offered another new deal after about 2 months of being there. That season, I played every single game that could have been possibly played. I had a good time up there. It was just freezing up there, but other than that, it weren't too bad. But I was still based in Luton at the time, and the train used to go from Luton, so I used to jump on the train more often than not, and it used to drop us pretty much outside the station. So it was always, I was away from home, but not away from home, because at them times you finish training at 12:30, I'll be back in Luton for 3 o'clock and nothing doing, you know. So that's what I went on to after Luton, which was probably one of the biggest and best decisions I'd made in my career at that point.
Was that change a big change then, or the experience, or?
It was a big change. It's a big change because it's a different way of life, isn't it? It's sometimes when you do stay up there and you don't know anybody and it's brass and you're just living in a hotel and you're trying to find a new house up there. It's kind of, that was probably the turning point of me playing a high level of football. So I think at that moment I was in a good time. And when I was there, my manager left to go to Bradford at the time. He was in the Championship. And when I got offered a new deal, he kind of said, look, don't fully sign it, get it all agreed, because he wanted to buy me. And I kind of got led by the attraction of the move rather than kind of looking after my contract and my next 2 or 3 years, if that makes sense.
Right.
Cut a long story short, without boring you, it got a bit messy and I ended up having to take the club to court because they kind of got wind that they wanted me to go there, because when they originally put a deal on the table, they kind of offered me a bit of dead money in comparison to what I'd done and the other big players that were there. And I think at that moment, I was probably one of the big players. And literally, a true story, I remember ringing the agent, the chairman of the football club, pretending to be from another club interested in buying myself. So what I done was I got a figure for what they wanted, and at the time I think that he said that he wanted £250,000 for me. So that was mad money at that time. So when I went back in to negotiate my contract, I kind of put in that I've been told that you're asking for £250,000. So what you offer me needs to reflect that. So by the time I come out of the meeting, I've got what I want, and that goes back to the streetwiseness. I'm not stupid. And I don't need somebody to do that for me. I've got an agent, but I don't need him to make those calls for me because I've got to protect and look after myself. But as I said, I got my head turned, and in the end, they tried not to pay the deal, paid out the deal, and then we had to go to court, and then they had to pay out of court. And that's the only reason I left there. But at that point was when I was at my best football, and that's where I kind of fell into a bit of a sticky 2 years because I was in between kind of fighting a court case with them and being advised by the PFA if I signed for another club, then I'm almost conceded that they're right to terminate the contract. So it got a bit sticky, but we got out of it in the end, and it is what it is.
Right, because my next question was going to be, how is this contractual thing, how does it really go down for someone who's been through it?
Do you know what, it's pretty basic stuff now. It's got a bit more complex in this modern era, but pretty much you signed a 1, 2, 3 year deal. I always signed a year deal for a reason, because when you signed say a 2-year deal, the increment in the second year wasn't that big a jump. Right. And it's almost like a fixed product on a mortgage. You know what you're getting, where you take the gamble of running out of contract, having a bad year and not getting off a new deal. But because I backed myself, I always signed years deals, because the next contract negotiation was based on how I done as a player. And if I'd done well enough, that meant I could command more money. So generally a contract works off a basic, which you'd get all round the clock. Appearance money, that's if you were on the bench or appeared in the game. Win bonus, in my case, I had a clean sheet bonus. You always got money if you move clubs as a sign-on fee, or you got relocation fee to if you was moving house, that you could obviously furnish it, those little small perks. But obviously the contracts that we're talking about now, in comparison to what they once were, are so wild. They'll make your eyes water. You know, we almost played 10 years too soon in terms of when we talk about serious money. And the generation before us, when I mentioned the likes of Ricky Hills, the Marvin Johnson brothers, they probably played 20 years too soon in comparison to today's money, if that makes sense.
Right, okay.
So what happened next in your career? Because I noticed you played for a few clubs, haven't you?
Yeah, I think from there...
Do you want to just give us a little...
Yeah, from there,
the teams you played for.
I went to Northampton from there, and I don't even remember him. Lee Harper was there at the time, so it was me and Lee. We used to travel in together, and then I was due to get in the side because Lee broke his leg. So I think I'd missed about 10 games on the bench, and then he broke his leg. So that was my chance for me to kick-start my time at Northampton. And then I played in a reserve game on the Wednesday, funny enough, against Luton. Ready to obviously play the first team game on the Saturday, and then broke my finger, which was probably my only injury of a break that kept me out for as long as it did. I think I was out for 4 months. And then from that period, I just didn't get going. I couldn't get in the side, and had an opportunity to join Boston. And I joined Boston, done 2 years there. And then from there, I went to, before that, I went to Ipswich and Burnley to cover in the Championship. And then I went to Boston. And then from Boston, I went to Bristol City, and then on to Torquay, which was the one club that I said I'd never join because it's just too far. The one club. Ian Atkins was the manager at the time, and he was one of those old school managers, kind of no nonsense kind of guys. And I had a call from my agent saying he wanted to sign me, and I was like, it's too far. The only way I'll do it if he let me train like twice a week, because I'm not moving down there. And my agent was like, no, I can't ask him that, not a chance. I said, well, I'll ask him. And then I rang him and said, look, I'm happy to sign, but I'd only train on a Monday and Friday because it's way too far. And weirdly, strangely agreed to it, which surprised me. So I used to drive down there kind of twice a week, and that's like the back of beyond. And then Brentford's come in for me because I was doing well there, and then I signed for them on New Year's Day when the window opened back up. Because all you got to remember about the windows, you're always governed by also the transfer window to when you can move. And it was just a chance for me to come closer back to home. Although driving home after training from Brentford was a 40-minute journey, but getting into Brentford on the mornings training, it was like a 3-hour journey. And then I kind of then finished up my last pro club at MK Dons, and it was strange because I remember taking my mum to IKEA. And at the time, MK Dons were building a new stadium. And I said to my mum, I need to finish here, like this is close to home. And literally about 4 days later, Paul Ince's agent rang me and said, look, Paul wants to sign you. And that kind of just come out of nothing. So I kind of said to Brentford, I'm not re-signing, I'm going to get close to home. And then literally that Milton Keynes then was my last pro club, which kind of come at a good and a bad time because I didn't start the season, and we went on and had an unbelievable season. And then me and Di Matteo came in after Paul Ince went to Blackburn, and we just didn't get on. We just one of the few managers I just didn't get on with. And at the time when I first went to MK Dons, that's when I started my business, because I was then thinking about life after football. Football money was good, but it was never going to be a retirement package for me to not have to work. So I set up a business, and it kind of, when I left MK Dons, because the geezer was doing my head in, it was kind of like, I'm done traveling. I got to a point where I'm like, I'm not getting in my car and going back to crazy places for work. And when I look back, I had a couple of years where I was quite angry as a person because I couldn't understand why, and it was just because I ended my career too soon on a professional level, if that makes sense. But I'd probably done the right thing from a personal future paying the bills level. It was the right thing to do.
How old were you when you stopped playing professionally then?
I was 32 or 3 at the time.
That's young for a goalie, isn't it?
Yeah, it's young. I mean, even now, I could have probably easily, I'm 43 now, I could have easily have played to 38 minimum. I looked after myself, I kept myself fit. But there's the glitz and glamour of football is lovely. The sticky bits when you're traveling in your car. I traveled a lot of places, Burnley's, Bristol City's, Ipswich, Torquay's, a lot of far places, whilst keeping my family rooted, because the only option in football is you either stay away and digs or get a hotel, or you got to move your whole family. And it's a lot of upheaval for, at the time, a youngish family. So I done all the traveling. And I just got to a point where I was just done traveling, and I was done also with the politics and the nonsense of football, especially being a goalkeeper. That's probably the flip side of it, because if you're not playing, it becomes a bit of a bind because you miss that kind of match day game time.
You spoke about the cars and stuff that you do now, like entrepreneurship. Tell us a bit more about that, please.
Well, we're set up, obviously playing football, obviously, like most football players, are in their cars. But again, through, I suppose, naivety, a lot of the lads were getting bad deals, and I could see bad deals going on. And I remember buying 2 cars when I was at MK Dons, me and my missus at the time. And the geezer was like in the showroom, you should do this. Like, you've just come in and negotiated an unbelievable deal. And I was kind of into my cars anyway, and kind of, but not losing the crazy money that these guys lose, but on a smaller scale, obviously pay related. And I decided to go into that field and kind of broker in between, mediate between the dealer and client. And because I had now a background of, say, football players, agents, managers, it kind of already gave me a platform where I could reach out to people quite easily without exploring the outside world. And I'd done a few deals for players, and then literally we just got so busy overnight that I'd be going to games on the coach and doing deals as I'm pulling up at the coach to go and play for a game, and then getting the old nudge, come on, Nate, we've got a game now, and then having to shut the laptop down and get in game mode. So it's almost like it kind of just took off. It weren't planned to take off that quickly. It was kind of like a 4-5 year plan that by the time I actually properly retired at 35, 36, 37, I had a bit of stability behind me, because I think that's the biggest problem in football. You go from hero wages to zero wages, literally. There ain't a, well, you'll get this for the next 2 or 3 years while you find your feet. Once that last paycheck comes in, that's you done. And a lot of people that I know, they've struggled mentally, they've struggled financially, because that kind of tap just got switched off. And I remember it might be Marv or Mitchell when I was playing, said they said to me, enjoy your career because it goes in a blink of an eye, and protect your money and look after your money. And I think to myself, talking about, I'm 17. Before I blink, I'm at the back end. I was just probably smart enough at the time just to get something kick-started that obviously to the day now I'm still in the same business doing the same thing. So one of the fortunate ones, to be honest with you, and got a break by having people around me that I knew, which allowed us to break into normal consumers, businesses, people off the street, you know, and then kind of just expand like any normal business expands.
That's good. That's good.
So what does Enker Wheels actually do? What sort of, what makes you different from like your average car dealership? Or
well, it's the same process in essence. However you guys would normally buy your cars, we just cut out the crap in the middle. So we, as a company, we get much superior discount levels, and most people in this era take cars on finance rather than cash. Cash is a bit old hat from the old days where everything was bought. If you didn't have the money to buy it, you don't buy it. But like I said to people, like Wiseman said, if anything that makes money, you should buy it. Anything that loses money, you should hire it, straight rent it. So it was just getting people's thinking into, we could do everything a main dealer does. Our stock comes from the same main dealer that you get your stock from or your car from, but our price is 10 times cheaper.
Hello, yeah, sorry, you froze up there for a minute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear. Yeah, so just car sales. And then we extended it with a body shop because the two went hand in hand. Because at first I only dealt with new cars and new cars only. I weren't interested in second-hand cars. But then as we went through it, for every new car you sell, there's a second-hand car that needs to be dealt with or moved on. And I kind of realised after year 2, 3, I used to just give my dealers all the second-hand cars. And I realised for every second-hand car I was giving away, probably approximately 1,500 quid, £2,000 a unit. And then when I looked back and said, well, I've sold 200 cars, that's a lot of money to give away. So then we then started obviously restocking our cars and then remarketing them ourselves in the same way main dealers do. And then luckily we then extended on with a body shop. So we repair vehicles. And again, through a bit of luck as well, because obviously with my connections from buying from main dealers, we now had another service to offer them, which was repairing their cars. So a lot of used cars, before people buy them, before they hit their pitch, they come to us to get prepped and sorted, and then we send them back and then they put them on their pitch and sell them. So we're kind of a one-shop stop, if that makes sense, which kind of people buy into.
So have you got a base? Are you local? Or?
We're in Kempston, so we're based in Kempston, in Bedford. We was at a site for probably 10 years, and now we've recently moved about 3 or 4 years ago. So we've been going for about 13 years solid, and we're just kind of trying to expand again because the body shop side, I think now is a bit that probably blows off a little bit more because everyone's needing cars repaired now, and end of lease cars need fixing, and main dealers have got more cars. So it's just trying to keep up with the demand, but there's still the struggle of I've still got to sell myself to people. I've still got to know when to dress smart or know when to be in my hoodie. You know, it's still business after all. You got to, it's like my career. I had to keep that kind of resolute attitude to keep going, and it's the same with the business. I have to keep hitting myself in the head sometimes, just to remember what I'm doing, so I don't kind of fall by the wayside, because it's easily done in life, easily.
How many people do you employ?
So we've got 5 lads out the back and 1 in office, so 7 in total. More often than not, I've got a few lads that work on a flexi basis in terms of weekend work or holiday work. It's quite small knit, because obviously it's repairing cars. Only so many people can be in one space at the same time, and I like to do most of the stuff myself.
Is it more different? Is it different? Is it a different way of selling? Say new cars and second-hand cars. Are they totally different in comparison in sales or whatever, in the way of running things?
Not really. I think a new car's easy, because there's no problems with a new car, because it comes from the manufacturers. And if I say in a respectful way, if I have a new car and it develops a problem, I don't really lose any sleep, because it's a brand new car. I didn't make it. If I sell somebody a used car, then I take a little bit more care with that, because that's now on my company's shoulder. I can't control if a car breaks down or don't break down. I just got to make sure that I pick my stock for the right places. So sometimes customers come to me with their cars that they want to trade for a new car, but I still do the deal. I just don't trade on their car, because I don't have the trust in it. So they're very different, because obviously your reputation is on the basis of how well that car is for them, which sounds crazy, but that is the life of a car. And we have to take a bit of a, I suppose, consideration to try and hope that car is long lasting. The problem you have in this era, that there's so many people clocking cars, winding back the clocks, and some of them you can tell, so you stay with them. Some of them you wouldn't know. It's impossible to know. In the same way, people will go to the biggest dealerships, Land Rovers, your BMs, your Audis, your Aston Martins, your Ferraris, and buy cars thinking that they're lovely, but 2 minutes ago they just left my premises to get sorted. So it's just kind of, it's an educational thing rather than what's right and what's wrong.
So are you a mechanic then? I mean, do you deal in cars as well? Are you? What made you get interested in selling cars then? What?
It was just a passion that I had. As I said, on the educational front, not for me. Common sense, streetwise, I've got that in abundance, and it was just something that I could go into, that I had a passion for. The same like football, but something that also had longevity. Okay, there will always be cars on the road, and if they're not on the road, they'll be in the air. So it was just finding something that would be not a 2-minute situation. It would be there for as long as I want it to be there for. And eventually, if I can do it right, I can hand it down and sit back and let someone else run it and still be a part of it from a distance when I get to that kind of retirement age. So it's not so much really a mechanics. It was just kind of trying to, if you got a problem with your car, we can fix all elements, if that makes sense. It was just getting that one-shop stop, which we don't have currently, and we don't have without obviously getting bumped and paying silly money for. But we look after everybody, you know, as best as we can.
So Tanya, you're still involved in football then, yeah? Before we wrap up,
Yeah.
You're still doing a bit of coaching and stuff, yeah?
Yeah. I suppose I think that kept me sane as well, Mark, because obviously went into management with my brother when we finished football as well. So whilst doing the cars, we were both managing. We had a long time at Olsey, done second-years. I had a spell at Bedford on my own. I recently went into Bedford next door. A guy from Bitcoin took over the football club.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, so I've been there. But again, it's again one of those other, I suppose, problematic football scenarios that we talk about, where there's for the amount of now black people that are in the game, very few black managers at any level. And it's kind of I have to question myself, do I want to go through that process of starting that side of the journey again? Because as we know, all the owners that are owning the football clubs, if they're not the big clubs that are Saudi, they're definitely not black. And there's no secret to why we're still in the same scenario on a management front that we would have been on a playing front many years ago.
Yeah. So the situation still remains the same.
I think it always will. I think there will be no change in that. That's the truth. If all the changes that we see are forced, governed changes, they're token gesture changes. I wouldn't want to get a job because I was black. I'd want to get a job because I was worthy and my skill set allows me to do the job. It doesn't mean I wouldn't take a job. But you look at the likes of Ricky. Don't get me wrong. Ricky wasn't a great manager when he was at Luton. That's a factual. Ricky was one of the best coaches I worked under. But even as a black man, I can be honest and say as a manager, he was poor, but still not poor enough to not get another opportunity within the game to showcase himself, if that makes sense. Now, if you look at, remember his number 2, Chris Ramsey, who was another black lad who's been through the England setup, it just goes to show you when you're off the radar and you're doing your things at high level, but not in the spotlight, it has a lot more longevity. And sometimes we have to retune our minds between what's right and what's wrong. Are you going to change any of this overnight? Of course you're not. You've been trying to change it for how many years? We're trying to change it, and we're still in the same boat. We have to change us first and our thinking, and stop waiting for the system to change. The system ain't changing. Facts.
So T, last question before we wrap up. Take the knee or don't take the knee?
Big question.
That's an easy one. Don't take the knee.
Nah.
It's a waste of time. Anyway, Rock Up. There's been years of kick racism out of football. They used to do a yearly thing where you wore a t-shirt. I think I wore it once and then never wore it again. I didn't wear it again because there was no change. There's no change because the change needs to come at the top. So when you see these players getting booed at international level, Champions League level, and these are big clubs and they're getting fined something crazy like £5,000 as a football club, and then you see a player just do something silly and get fined £50,000, what's more serious? Until that change at the top happens where a club is heavily penalised. I mean, like 10-point docked. I'm talking £100,000 fine. You'll never change what happens within a football stadium. So why take the knee?
I agree.
I think it's mere symbolism, really. It's taking a knee. It's just symbolism, really. That's all it is. I think if there's need to be a change, there will be a cost to pay for the power at B. There would have to be a cost. There would have to be a price to be paid, and they're not willing to pay a price. So there will always. You're right. There will always be racism in the sport.
I think the biggest problem that you have is, going off track a bit, I think the biggest problem you have is you had the years of the mad racism, the bananas and all that. And then you had not a chill. It wasn't a chill. What you remember, the difference between then and now, everything's documented by a phone. Yeah. There's no hiding place from it. Okay. And youngsters are being exposed to it now, becomes accessible to them, and now it's acceptable to them. So now what you've got now, you've got another generation of 12, 13, 14-year-olds that are yet to go through their journey as a men to 25, 30-year-olds that now will carry that for the next 10 years. And the next 10 years of that, their kids will now carry that from what they see going on. There will be no change because also the social media platform hasn't allowed it to change from what we see. Now it can't be hidden, but social media has the power to change it, but social media don't want to change it.
Yeah.
I think that there's a couple of people who got fined, who got prison terms, didn't they, for racism? I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah, I think there is this is how I look at it.
For actually, abusing a player. I mean,
yeah, and I think is that right or wrong? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. Are they throwing the book and make an example? Yeah, but for every small case, there's next week's the same, the week after the same. I just think you're going to catch fewer then you are not going to catch. I think the way to stop it within a stadium is if you make big sanctions. Say we're all Luton Town fans, we cannot possibly jeopardise that for our football club. So if racism is proven in your stand and your club gets punished, if I love Luton Town, what am I not going to do next Saturday? I'm not going to be racist in the stand. But is that helping the problem, or is that just masking it in a football stand? Where's the line? Where's the line drawn? And also respect that we're also all racist. We're all racist. Every colour creed is all racist because we're all from a different area. We're all racist to a degree, but we're highlighting it, but we're not squashing it. We're not actually coming up with the master plan. We're just skimming over it by talking about it now. And past players talk about it, but taking a knee all now has not done anything. We've seen many cases since taking the knee. People are booing now taking the knee. That's how crazy. But people was booing before, just as they started taking the knee. It just goes to show.
It's because they know what it means. You see, by taking a knee, they know what it means, and they don't really like it. They know what it means.
Yeah, but I don't. That sounds wrong. I don't know what it means.
Yeah.
I know what it means, but I don't. What is the symbol of it? What does it change? What does it change? There'll be players there'll be as many players as racist. If you took a percentage of minority or done a stat, there'll be as many players that are racist as players than fans that are racist. So it's a general thing. It's not something that you can ever control. You'll never be able to control it. Never ever. And it's sad to say that, but that's where we're at. That's how it is. All you can do is make sanctions. Yes, you can throw. I remember playing in a game, and I'm going to. I remember playing in the game, and I remember it was of an era when we were talking about racism, and the guy racially abused me in the stand as I went to get the ball, and I made the referee stop the game. I said, I'm not moving until he's thrown out. I don't care if he goes to jail, gets punished. Throw him out. He doesn't deserve to be in the stadium. And I had to physically stop the game. There's not many people that are strong enough to do that, or willing to put the heat on themselves to do that. So it's a massive talking subject, of course it is, but I don't know the answer. I just don't see a solution to the problem. I don't see it. I don't.
And you literally stopped the game in closing. Then Tally, where was that? What match was that? I don't remember.
That was somewhere like Bury. That was somewhere like Bury away.
Who were you playing for at the time?
I was playing for at the time Boston at the time. So that was like Bury away. But even in
time ago, so you've been fighting the struggle from you stood up a lot of black players wouldn't have done that at the time. So you even stopped the game, yeah?
100% stopped the game because I wasn't prepared to. You know what? It's not because the reason why I stopped the game because there was a steward sat next to the geezer.
Yeah.
So the steward's not doing his job. Yeah. So if the steward doesn't do his job, then it's a free for all. Yeah. At that point, the steward should be going, all right, whether I agree or disagree, I've got to be seen to be doing something. He was prepared to let it slide. There's too many sliders to fix the problem. Way too many sliders. It's like business. When I pick up the phone and the old Doris is talking to me, she comes off the phone thinking that I'm white. Only when she turns up to see me, you can see, oh, whoa, she's taken aback because you've got to know the balance. You've got to know the shift. You've got to know when to shift your mentality to be able to do that. That's a personal decision that I make for business. If I spoke to a road and how we would speak off this conference call, she's not buying into her facts. She's not buying into that. She's shook. But you just have to deal with people properly.
It's systemic, isn't it? Really, it's systemic.
I think that's what I mean. I don't know if you have to go now, but I just feel that if there's more managers or whatever, like in positions, more managers coming in and taking responsibility on whatever, there'll be more respect within for the players, like because the managers or whatever, like are in positions of authority.
Yeah.
But you see, I feel, yeah.
The only problem with that is though, if they're Jurgen Klopp, Alex Ferguson, Jose Mourinho, because they've been in games such a long window, they're so highly respected. Okay, they can speak and be heard. Now, let's just say that black person's got that first manager's job. The only thing he's trying to do is sail under the water and keep himself in a job to try and build that status. Until he's built that status, he becomes a target if he starts discussing something that he believes in. It's wrong, but again, he has to look after himself in that window. And that's the problem. There's not enough black managers of such superiority that they can speak without any judgment call, if that makes sense.
Brilliant. Okay, we're going to wrap it up now, but Nathan, thanks very much, man. That was very insightful. Thanks for coming on. So everyone who's joined in the chat, thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
Yeah, just message me whenever. Respect.
Take care. Respect. Bye.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
Nice one, brother.
Bless up.
Cheers, man.